Hey, thanks for joining me. So, I was able to pick up this book very recently for like a buck. And I remember when back in the very early 90s, um, most of the people who watch my channel, we're all kind of round about the same age for the most part. And we were all there and we all kind of know the crazy insanity that was going on. And every company was trying to sell everything in every possible way because there was a lot of money to be made. And so, of course, I remember seeing advertisements for this issue. This cover is very familiar to me. I feel like I saw it all over the place for a short span of time back in, I think it's 92. And I never did see it on the shelves anywhere, or if I did, I don't remember that far back, honestly. Um, and in the world of, when I was younger, I've kind of talked about this. Like, I didn't have a lot of money, but my dad went out of the way to make sure that every time he humanly possibly could, he would hook me up with some cash to go buy comic books because he would tell me that you know he wasn't able to provide the kind of things that he always wished that he was able to, but because I and my brother, my older brothers, and my younger brother too, when he got a little bit older, we liked comic books so much, and it was so entertaining to us, and especially me. Um, my dad was like, "It's so inexpensive, and you guys love it." So he always made sure we had money. But that being said, I didn't have an endless supply of money. I couldn't buy everything, and in the '90s there was a billion things. So even if I saw this on the shelf at the time, I probably wasn't going to pick it up. Not because I had no interest in the character, but I kind of had no interest in the character. It wasn't a character I knew anything about. In the '90s, Luke Cage, Power Man, that was just one of those characters that I kind of would see pictures of him in his original costume with like the big yellow shirt, and he had like a metal tiara or something like that, big hair, and it kind of fit the '70s aesthetic from which he was created in. And so I kind of understood the basic concept, and this was a character. It's going to be a black African American character that was introduced, and Marvel Comics at the time always trying to have different characters from different backgrounds, and not leave any kind of opportunity to show a variety and a diversity of characters. And from what I understand, he was pretty well received. From what I looked up, his original series went like 125 issues. That's not nothing, that's pretty significant. And so the character became relatively well known, and then I think he kind of just disappeared and was kind of left untouched for a while. And then this series comes out, and I get it. Like, let's take this character, people hear about him, we can revamp him, we can do something new. And okay, sure, and I don't care anything about a character, about like where they're from, what the culture is, what their ethnicity is. I don't care, as long as we write a good story that's interesting with the protagonist that I enjoy following the story. I'll read anything, But it like anything else, it's all subjective. Like, what is your taste? Like, what's good to me might be terrible to you, and vice versa. And so it's kind of a hit and miss. But I'm like, show me something interesting. I don't care what it's about or who it's about. Let's read it. So getting a chance to finally see this thing, I was like, okay, I'm kind of interested. I'm curious to see what this was all about. So I started reading it. Good Christ, is it a slog? It is. I'm sorry. This book fucking sucks, and it's just because it's poorly made. I was flipping through it, and I was reading it, and as I did a flip through, like when I first got it, I was kind of, I always do, like, I think most of us, a flip through, but I was like, walls of text everywhere. I'm like, oh, okay. All right. But then I started reading it, and I kind of get the idea. I feel like it feels like it's a well-intentioned, solid effort, but I was struggling to keep my attention on this thing. I was just like, I had to force myself to read this shit, and that's bad. Now, again, that could be just my experience. I'm like, maybe it's just not connecting with me. It has nothing to do with maybe the writer, the artist, the character. Maybe I just don't like this kind of story. There's 1,000 comics. There's 1,000,000 comics out there I don't like. So I looked up, did a little Googling, because again, the comic wasn't entertaining me in the slightest. And I looked it up, and so okay, characters created in the 70s. His original run went 125 issues, and from what I read, this thing only went about 20 issues, and from what I read, not well received, and wasn't very popular, and did nothing for the character, and he kind of vanished for the most part until in the early 2000s when Brian Michael Bendis grabbed onto him and threw him up in the had him involved with his with Jessica Jones character that he was writing, and then in the New Avengers, like the Avengers Disassembled, the New Avengers, and I read all of those books, and I was there when Cage showed up in those books, and I loved those stories. I'm all about the Avengers Disassembled and the New Avengers by Brian Michael Bendis. We will eventually get to those. Those are some of my favorite comics. I just thought they were spectacular, and Bendis seems to be a kind of a controversial name these days, like overrated and has been. I don't know if that's true. All I know is he wrote some really entertaining comic books that I love to this day. And so I did read a big long run where Cage guest starred as a character, and I liked him. And then I saw him pop up in the Daredevil series on Netflix, and I really liked the actor that portrayed him, and it seemed like they got the character mostly right. So I'm like, he's an interesting character, but holy shit, does this book fucking suck. I'm trying to put that all together to be like, this thing is just, oh my God. I could not get into this. Dwayne Turner on pencils. I know him, and I've been a fan of his work, but I've got to say, this is like this. I'm not exactly sure when his career started. He clearly can draw. Like, that is a great face, great uplighting. But this is not his best work. There's some really rough storytelling that was hard to follow, and it didn't work. The name Mark McLaurin for writer, not a name I'm familiar with. Looked him up, and I'm like, okay, so he's written stuff. That's awesome. Don't know who Christopher Ivey is as an inker. Don't know any of those things, or I don't know who any of these people are except Dwayne Turner. And again, I'm like, well, Dwayne Turner's drawing it. That's got to be something. But I was not thrilled. The cover's kind of fine. It's got this kind of a metallic sheen to it that's supposed to be interesting. The one thing that kind of caught my eye was the almost like black and white artwork, like the no color. And as an artist, I enjoy seeing that. And then the shot of, Cage there. He wants to leave the name Power Man behind. He's breaking free of the shackles of his old costume design, literally shattering chains and yellow shirts. And whatever, he's got a big silver belt buckle, and then, big silver ankle monitors or whatever the fuck they are. And then we cut to a newsroom, at a news reporting agency, and they're talking about, they basically give a background of who Luke Cage was. So to bring people up to speed. Okay, I get it. We get a shot of kind of how he became, gets his powers, and they give a breakdown of who and what he is. And they're like, we want to track him down, and we got to get some stories going on with this Cage character. This is a big deal. And okay, sure. Looking at the art, there's some places where I'm like, and when I notice on this panel here specifically, and then through several places through the rest of the book, I'm going to assume almost 100% that Dwayne Turner is utilizing photo reference for a lot of his art, and which is fine. But it does stand out as very obvious when there's a photo reference shot and then one that you're just pulling from your head because they don't look the same. But he does a pretty dang good job overall in terms of the faces and that type of stuff. Like, again, Dwayne Turner, obviously a great artist, but these earlier works, it's not great. So then we cut to, there's Cage, and he's just rumbling with a bunch of fools, just beating the piss out of a bunch of white folk. It could be anything. I don't care. But he's like, these guys were hired to get him. And so he's beating the shit out of him because that's what, Luke Cage does. He's there to kind of stand up for the little man, all that type of thing. It's a pretty solid drawing. It's a pretty solid, big muscular shot of the guy lifting him up. I was looking at this, they got rid of the original outfit, the yellow shirt and the chains and the tiara, and that is kind of a dated outfit for sure, but I don't think this one's any better. It's black leather and pants and big silver belt buckle or whatever the fuck. It's not a great improvement, but at the time in the 90s, it looks like something like, yeah, that's what he would be wearing in the 90s. So these guys, they get out a gun, shoot him straight in the chest, and so we're establishing his powers. Like, they talked about it in the first couple of pages, but now we see he can take bullets to the chest. He's like, yeah, you obviously don't know about my powers, bulletproof skin, sucker. But he talks about how it does hurt. Now, I think that's kind of an element that kind of changes with every writer. I feel like I've seen Cage get shot before, and he just shrugs it off. Here he's saying that it might not penetrate his skin. It doesn't actually cause him harm, but it does hurt. So I don't know where the consistency is with that. So keeps beating the shit out of him. But while he's beating the shit out of all these rando thugs, from behind him comes some chain weapon that wraps around him, and it zaps him. He's like, taserized chains? This somebody's idea of a joke? So it wraps him up, but he snaps free of it pretty quickly. And then I'm like, well, where did the taserized chains come from? Because he just looks behind him, and there's just a van busting through a wall. Now, the clarity of what's going on is extremely rough here, because where are they? It looks like they're standing out in the middle of a street. That's fine. So, kind of minimalistic backgrounds through here, except an occasional brick wall. That's all fine. I get it. But then I'm like, what is this van crashing through? Is it like street barriers, I guess? It's not very clear exactly where they're at. But the van comes charging up. Cage has to dive out of the way. And then they bust open the back of the van, and like all the thugs he was beating the shit out of jump in the van and take off. So Cage, oh hell no. He jumps up, grabs onto the back of the van. It's not getting away. He punches it open and rips it open. He says, don't tell me you boys are cutting before we've been introduced. Name's Lucas, but you can call me Cage. Okay, sounds like pretty standard, like, comic book type superhero dialogue if I've ever heard it. And they're like, what are you, some kind of superhero? And he's like, yeah, some used to call me that, but I always saw it different. I'm hot with my fist, boys. But I bust heads for the American dream, life, liberty, and the pursuit of buco bucks. Now, I'm reading that shit verbatim. I'm not making it up. I know I make up bullshit dialogue sometimes when I review these books, but that shit's straight from them. And while they're beating the shit out of each other, this guy's like, hardcore. And so I guess this guy driving the van with the little diamond plate, little underoos, whatever the hell this studded jeweled thing that he's wearing is, he's like this new villain of the book. Or I assume he's a new character. He's like, it's not supposed to happen like this so soon, but take the wheel, Martin. But don't slow any. I think I'll oblige our guests. Time to begin Mr. Cage's higher education. This guy's like, hardcore, don't. Who's going to drive? And then Mr. Hardcore's like, and I'm an excellent teacher. So the dialogue boxes kind of don't line up and read them in the proper order. It's really weird. But then I was looking at this lower panel right here, because again, they're supposed to be in the back of a van, like driving in the street. And look how wide this shot is, because this is the front two seats. This is the driver's seat. This is the passenger seat. And Mr. Hardcore is jumping out to the back of the van. And this thing is as wide as like an office room. Like it's now I understand, like, this would be visually something hard to illustrate. Cage, one guy surrounded by a bunch of dudes in the back of a confined, tight space in a van, while also showing the guys in the front of the van talking and getting involved in the fight in the back. Compositionally, to illustrate that would be really hard to make it look clear. I get it. But man, does this is wide as hell. But then Mr. Diamond Plate Underoos throws the chain thing around Cage again, and it doesn't seem to do anything, but bad guy's explaining what it is, because Cage is like, what is this weapon thing again? And Diamond Plate guy's like, that ting is called a manrikisa, 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 Mr. Cage, and Eastern fighting weapon adapted for modern warfare. I outfitted it with some internal tasers. And others with even better surprises, like explosives. So I guess he's saying he outfitted this chain weapon with bombs. Sure. And all the other bad guy thugs are like, holy shit, he's nuts. We got to get out of here. So then I do remember when this book was being advertised, I saw this panel. This was in some magazine that I read somewhere as like a preview image. And I always thought that that kicking shot, that action of that pose was pretty awesome. So Diamond Plate Underoos guy, he's like, hey, don't, what does he say? He says, now don't you go off trying to take it off, Dare. You got a valuable lesson here. Learn from the master. A true master depends not on a single weapon alone, even if that weapon is himself. That's your problem, Mr. Cage. Too much emphasis on power. What good is raw strength against water? Nothing in the world is weaker than water, yet it wears away the hard and strong. So I'm instantly like, I've heard this speech from, I think it's Bruce Lee. He's like, nothing is softer than water, but it can penetrate rock. I'm like, okay, I get it. This guy's been trained in all kind of martial arts and philosophies and shit. And he's like, I'm going to be water against stone, whatever. That's fine. So they're beating the shit out of each other. And I don't understand why there was suddenly an explosion here. I guess it's the explosive laced chain that got wrapped around Cage's lower waist there. And then Diamond Plate Underoos guys gets out of the way and then it blows up and that knocks Cage out of the van. And so the van takes off. And they tell Cage, like, stay down, stay buried, because if you surface again, you'll be crushed. So Cage is on the ground. So I guess the idea is that it looked like he got he got his ass kicked, and everyone kind of got to see it. Because some voices from off panel said, hardcore trashed him. Get out of here. And Cage is like, oh, hell no. These guys, I was hired to stop you guys. So I don't know who these guys are, because I thought the van was driving away. So I thought they drove away from the area that they were in. But I guess they didn't get too far, because I guess there's more thugs there. So Cage picks up a frickin' like manhole cover from the ground and throws it at him like a frisbee. That'd fucking kill him. It's a comic book, so who cares, right? And so he stops those guys, and then the cops show up, and Cage literally says, about time I done my part. Time to make the donuts. And I'm like, what the fuck does that? Oh, is this like it's like a metaphor? Make the donuts. Like, I'm gonna make the donut. I'm gonna make my money. So anyway, now he's being interviewed by a bunch of media people. They're all taking pictures and stuff like that. And Cage is just talking like, my name's not Power Man, it's da-da-da-da. But then this guy shows up. He's like, hey, Mr. Lucas, representing the Chicago Spectator with the deal mutually beneficial arrangement for both of us. I know you won't refuse. How about for old time's sake? Put her there, pal, and we can discuss the details. And Cage says, don't make me repeat myself, Hogarth. Hogarth? You got a job, mostly legal, and good money, we can talk. But the handshake stuff is played. I'm a businessman. Okay, so he's like, I like that they're leaning into the fact that Cage is not like, he's not like Captain America good guy, right? He's more like, he's going to do the right thing. But he's also like, I'm here to make some cash. So let's talk. You got a job that's mostly legal, and you got me some good cash. Let's talk. Let's do this. I'm like, okay, that's fair, Meanwhile, they go back to the news reporter people who are like, we need to get him. They're talking about how they want to get Cage tied up with the, they want to kind of have exclusive access to Cage to report on him and his dealings and his doings. And it'll pay Cage, it'll give them, big readership, and it'll be beneficial to everybody. But we'll have to see if we can make this work. Now it cuts back to, there's Diamond Plate Underoos guy, and I was looking at this shot, I'm like, this is, okay, he's got some kind of weird bazooka thing, I guess. And then just the shot, because there's something exploding, I guess, way down in the distance. This is a terrible angle for this shot, because I guess he's crouched up on some ledge of some building here with a bazooka, shooting down, blowing up a building of this guy. And from what I can understand from the words, that this guy wants to disappear, so they're trying to make it look like he's dead. So this is how they're trying to fake his death. They talk about that. He's like, tell me you're happy now. He's like, yes, I'm happy. And happily dead you'll remain. So he can, people think he's dead and he can kind of escape his criminal life. I'm like, okay. So now we cut back to the news agency. They got Cage there. So now they go through this whole explanation of who that guy was, why he's such a scumball, all the things he did as he come up, with building up a company and becoming an arms dealer and all this type of stuff. And we are trying to investigate him, and maybe you can help us. While they're chatting, on their big TV news screen wall, suddenly there's one of their people who work for them. They're like, holy shit, hey, the guy, his name's Angel, the bad guy that was trying to get away, that's trying to make people think that he's dead. They're like, holy shit, Angel, he's at an airstrip with some other companion. We don't know who he is. We got to go. If you want to get him, we can kind of track him down here at the airstrip. They're like, all right, that's it, Cage. We got a helicopter on the roof. We got to go now. So Cage, as he's listening into all this shit, he decides to take this girl who's there, this girl, and he's like, all right, well, there's one thing I got to know now, beautiful. And he like fucking pins her up against the wall, like gets right in her face and puts his hands on either side of her and gets right in her face. And they give him, Dwayne Turner gave him like creeper, like Jesus Christ, like look at that. This is super not okay the way this is shown. He's like, he pins her up against the wall and he says, what's in all of this for you besides a satisfied sense of civic responsibility? And she says, we want the story. Mickey D to accompany you for the pictures. One of their buddies here that works for them, he'll take pictures for you. Reports on your actions this morning sold out our early edition. More of the same would help for certain plans for expansion. And so Cage is like, solid. You're in it for the bucks. I like things clean like that. But keep your handshakes. Just have the check ready. So I'm like, okay. He's like, all right, you guys are in this for the money. So am I. So I guess he doesn't need to like creep or pin the woman against the wall, but he did. Now they get back into the helicopter. So now Cage is hanging out with this other guy who's going to be his photographer to go along and take pictures. And he starts talking about how he kind of knows Cage's history, and he knows his real name, and he knows who his parents are. Cage ain't having that shit. He's like, Cage is pissed off as the guy keeps explaining, look, I understand, you're the child I knew as the baby son of Leonard and Esther Lucas. So the helicopter's taken off, but suddenly the helicopter, by the text is explaining to us, helicopter's shaking all over because Cage is grabbing onto the motherfucker and telling him, like, hey, you don't be talking about my parents. I don't want to hear you talking about that shit. You just shut the fuck up and fly the helicopter. Okay, we're setting some boundaries here, I guess. And then just suddenly we're at some airstrip. Helicopter's coming down. There's an airplane. And the Angel guy, the bad guy, who was with Diamond Plate Underoos guy, I gotta say, it's an interesting design choice that Dwayne Turner come up with to put this guy with this kind of outfit on his arms, like all over his body, because it honestly looks pretty cool. But good Lord, what a pain in the ass that would be to draw over and over and over. All those little squares in a diamond little shape, and you got to put the little shadow on it. Like, if you take your time and do it right, it looks cool. Like, the pattern works, but God, what a pain in the ass that would be. But he's just down there. He's swinging his weapon, the little chain spiky point weapon thing, and he just yeets it up to the helicopter. It wraps around the top of the rotor blades. So Cage and photographer guy just jump out, boom, and I guess the helicopter explodes as it looks like Cage is slamming the photographer guy up against a tree, which I don't think that's what's supposed to be happening, but that was my first thought. I'm like, Cage, you're the indestructible one, guy. What are you fucking running the guy? You jump out of a helicopter and you're sliding him down a tree. That's going to kill him. But then Cage tries to take the brunt of the impact as they hit the ground. And so photographer guy, he's like, holy shit, that's hardcore, man. He's a bad guy. I heard this morning he trashed you. And Cage is like, oh, you motherfucker. Everyone trashed me. That didn't happen. But it's like, hey, you get him. You stop him. This is a great story. This is what we need. This is big money for all of us. Like, all right, all right. But Cage, of course, says, I ain't only about money, man. And I ain't got nothing to prove to nobody alive. But I took this job and I got to finish it. It's what I do. And your boss lady was right. I'm the only one who can. So, all right. So Cage is trying to establish he's not only about the money. He's going to do the right thing. So then we cut to moments later. There's a Jeep with something slamming into it. I'm like, what the fuck was... What? Because, okay, there's an airplane and there's a Jeep. And then Diamond Plate guy throws the weapon up, crashes the helicopter. They land, they talk, they get up, and Cage is back on the way. But they're in the Jeep. And so bad guy, Angel, or whatever the hell, he says, it's a stinking fence pole. Watch the payload. A lot of the stuff is volatile. I'm like, what are they talking about? What payload? I guess the crap in the back of the Jeep. And Diamond Plate guy is like, it's got to be our friend Cage. Again, and I'm needing to learn he needs to be learning the folly of crossing hardcore twice. Okay, so what happened is Cage got some kind of fence pole, picked it up out of the ground, and threw it at the Jeep so hard that it went through the window, but just in between the two guys. Lucky it didn't kill him. Now the Jeep has stopped, and there comes Cage running through the fence. Okay, so then the Jeep takes off to charge at Cage, and the guy's like, dude, there's explosives in the back, be careful. But then Cage slams into the Jeep, sends all this ordnance flying. The Jeep kind of twists and rolls and crashes. Okay, so then Cage is up here, the Jeep is on its side, and got this guy, Angel, here. Looks like he's unconscious. And Cage is like, all right, man, I'm going to get you out of here. I'm going to take your ass down. And then that stupid taser-fied chain weapon wraps around Cage's neck. And so Diamond Plate bad guy, hardcore, I guess he's out of sight. We don't see him until this last panel because he was in the Jeep up here, but you can't see him in panel 1. You only see him there. I guess you see a little bit of his leg. But the whole thing crashes. Hardcore goes flying out. Then he wraps up Cage with the taser-fied chain. And now Cage is getting electrocuted. And Hardcore keeps explaining how he's got all these awesome weapons from ancient cultures that he's modernized. And Cage can't stand up to that stuff. And so he's sitting here smiling with this evil look on his face. I didn't realize he had pointy little fingernails. But he's talking about how some of these weapons are diamond-tipped sharpness, enough to penetrate steel. So the idea is that he can actually hurt Cage. That's actually a really solid drawing right there. You know, there's a lot of places where the drawings are really solid. It's just the story is kind of boring me to tears, and the storytelling is kind of confusing in places. But there are places where you can clearly see that Dwayne Turner's really good. Like, he knows how to draw. So they keep fighting. Oh yeah, that's what he was doing. Is he taking off a glove to reveal his diamond-tipped fingernails? Because he goes slashing at him. So Hardcore says, you're a fool, Cage. So used to your invulnerability, it's made you weak and stupid. Can't see there's no such thing as invulnerability to modern technology. And Power Man's not so powerful against something he can't touch. And that pisses Cage off. So he says, don't call me that. So the chain went around his throat because bad guy gets up and around and behind him, wrapping the chain around his throat. So Cage just flexes, snaps the chain, and snaps all of it off him. He says, don't call me that. I'm Cage, and you're dog food. So he backhands Hardcore, sends him flying. And then again, more confusing, I'm like, well, what? Okay. He slapped him, sends him flying, but then the Jeep over here is just taking off. So I guess the other bad guy, Angel guy, is in the Jeep, and Cage is like, damn, sucker. And then the photographer guy, remember him? I guess he jumped over the fence. You can see him climbing the fence. He jumps into the Jeep, and Cage is like, holy shit, dude, be careful. You're going to get yourself killed. But before Cage can interrupt that situation, Hardcore shows back up, and he throws some shit into him that actually cuts him. And he's like, that feels like broken skin, doesn't it, Cage? That steel hard skin? How long has it been since you felt that? Not just the pain, but the penetration. You're talking hot to me now. So the weapon is spinning above his head, and Hardcore says, your blow could have done some damage. That's what she said. If it weren't for my kinetic Kevlar vest. Again, technology has rendered you ineffectual. Now, stay down and I'll take my leave. Like, goddamn, does this dialogue suck? And he talks about, he just saying more evil guy shit. Like, I gotta be honest, like, this shit is boring the hell out of me. Like I said, this is not that interesting. I get the point. What they're trying to get at here is that Cage is overconfident and maybe unprepared and maybe a little bit too reliant on the fact that he's almost at all times invulnerable. No one can hurt him. But against a guy who's trained in deadly skills with advanced weapons, all your invulnerability and your ego ain't gonna help you. Like, that's a solid point. You know, a character has to be strong but has to have lessons to learn. I get it. It's fine. But I'm just, the way that this is told, you know, I've said this before. Some of these comics that were coming out in the 90s that were trying to be this edgy, cool for the time 90s stuff, sometimes it feels like it's written by writers who come up with comics in the 60s and 70s, and they still kind of write them that way. This has the kind of feel of an old school comic while trying to put the gloss of a 90s edgy book on it. And I don't think it works. And, you know, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to the creators or anything like that. I feel like they were doing, it seems like they were trying to create something where it was well-intentioned and they're trying to do the best they can, but sometimes it just doesn't come together. And I back up thinking this book sucks by saying that it only went 20 issues and it's generally considered to be not very good at all. So I get the point. Idea, fine. Execution, nah. So yeah, this guy just keeps saying bad guy shit. And so Cage is, this was another weird thing where Cage is like, thanks for the choice, Skinny, but let's see how threatening you are when you're sitting on your butt. So I guess what Cage does is he slams his hands on the ground with the intention of like trying to like make the ground vibrate and knock him off his ass. But it didn't work. Hardcore's like, you'd trip me up from there. This asphalt's not carpeting. So then Cage just rips up a big chunk of the asphalt. I guess he was going to throw it at him. But then Hardcore just takes his chain weapon, and as Cage throws it, I guess that's what's going on here, his chain weapon deflects the asphalt thing, and then it flies off, and then suddenly something's exploding everywhere. It says someone else might have anticipated the explosive inferno the falling airborne explosives could unleash from the lethal payload around him. I'm like, what falling? I was just like, I kind of kept like speed reading through this fucking thing because it's just boring me to tears. But I'm like, what is exploding? All these, I don't care anymore. I'm done. I don't give a shit. I am done with this comic. Things explode. And photographer guy's beating the shit out of Angel guy. I guess he knocks his ass out and it makes him floor the Jeep. So now the Jeep's taking off. It's just heading off into wherever. So everyone has to bail out of the Jeep, I guess. Meanwhile, Hardcore thinks he defeated Cage. So he jumps up on the airplane and he pulls out some little weapon thing and throws it at Cage, and it's another diamond tipped something or other that hits Cage in the legs and makes him fall on his fucking face. And I was like, what is this thing right in front of him? Looks like a giant fucking flashlight. What is this? But I'm like, oh, okay. I guess it's supposed to be a bazooka. I guess bazookas are this nice blue color. There's one on the ground, and Cage is going for it. Why doesn't Cage just go up and fucking just pick up the airplane and rip its engine off? But no, he's going to go for the bazooka. Bad guy throws weapons at his legs, makes Cage fall on his face. He says, these things are diamond tipped. They could just have easily penetrated your steel hard skull and your ass, probably. And we will meet again, Cage. Until then, do yourself a favor. Learn how to stay down. And I was like, what is this interior we're looking at? What? I guess the airplane has... like, these are the controls, so I'm like, this should be a window, but there's a sound effect that says ka-chung. I'm like, what am I looking at? I thought it was like a steel plate slamming down in front of him, but now I'm like, no, okay, this is the front of the plane, And because it's glass, it's colored differently to show that we're looking through some glass. And that's the propeller, the one single blade of the propeller we can see. And he's starting up the plane. Like, I had to stare at this. I'm like, what the fuck am I looking at? I thought like a steel plate shut down over the door or something. This is dumb. So the plane is taking off. Hardcore is going to get away. And this is another terrible panel where this shot is showing Cage taking the bazooka, firing it, and the weapon hits right in front of the plane, tearing up the runway in front of the plane. It doesn't look like he's shooting it. There's no trajectory to show the weapon coming out. It's a hard panel to do, especially when you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 panels on a page. That one needed to be a little bit bigger, but it's the only way I could tell what was going on is because they explained it in the text. So Cage shoots the bazooka, blows up the runway in front of the plane so it can't take off. So then Cage goes up to the back of the airplane and rips the entire tail section off the fucking plane. Like, just done that the first time. And stupid bad guy, he just starts throwing more diamond-tipped weapons at Cage. He's using parts of the plane to deflect it. They're coming at each other. He's spinning his weapon. Cage is holding part of the plane. And Cage is like, I've noticed you've been avoiding close quarters. You scared of seeing what I can do to something I can touch? So they're implying that Hardcore is winning because he keeps his distance, which is fair. That's a tactical move. And so now Hardcore is like, he's kind of scared. He's like, no, stay back. You're like, don't get close to me. Don't, you'll rip his nuts off and stuff him down his throat. We don't want that. Meanwhile, the Jeep. Remember when the guy got knocked out and the Jeep was just careening off by itself? Well, here it comes. And it's still loaded with explosives. And then I guess the Jeep runs into the back of the plane, I guess. And then the plane careens off into the trees and the fence, and it explodes. And Cage is there, says, yeah, Hardcore, some people never learn. I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ, this explosion's well drawn. I like the drawing of the explosion and the coloring is good, but Jesus Christ, I'm like, this sucks. So now they got Angel, the bad guy. They captured him. Hardcore, where is he? Who knows? And so now photographer guy is there with a girl who runs the newspaper. And they're like, hey, we've got a mutually beneficial situation. We want to set you up with advertising in Chicago for a Heroes for Hire gig. In exchange, we'll get exclusive with pictures. And in the cases you handle, first person. And you're the only one who can do this. You should do some good. It'll be mutually beneficial. You can help people. You could get paid. We get paid. And so Cage actually shakes some motherfucker's hand because multiple times in the book there's been talk about shake my hand. He doesn't want a handshake. But this time, I guess we've all earned each other's respect. Meanwhile, later on, some mysterious bad guy holding a fucking human skull, because that's what bad guys do. There's Hardcore. And he survived. And they're like, we didn't want Cage's involvement. You failed everything. You suck. I think it's time to eliminate you. So behind Hardcore is some big muscly guy who shows up and punches him in the back of the head. But Hardcore easily defeats him and makes his case as to why Hardcore should get another chance at this. And mysterious skull-holding bad guy, he's like, all right, we can try this thing. But let's see how it goes. And so Hardcore, to show how dangerous he is, he brings up his clawed hand and presumably kills mysterious muscle guy in the background just to establish what an evil guy he is. I'm like, okay. And there's nothing. There's no letters pages. I mean, it's the first issue. But, there could be some text from Marvel talking about this is what we're doing with the character. I'd love it if there was something from the writer talking about what this book meant to him and why he was creating it and what he hoped to achieve with it. Nothing. So there's worse books out there. And in terms of story, like, I'm not a fan of how it was told. It's a little cheesy. It's a little silly. But clearly the writer is crafting a story with intentions, motivations, establishing the good and the bad of Cage and the lethality of the villains, setting up moral problems, setting up how we're going to fix them. Like, in terms of story, this is a million miles above the crap that you'd read from like a lot of the Image books that would be coming out like in the next year. But I'd rather read those Image books because they're more exciting and they're better art. it's kind of I'm kind of being a little bit of a hypocrite here when I talk about how fucking boring all those Image books were for the most part, but there was some enjoyment to be gotten out of them. But this, just like I said, I feel like it reads like an old school kind of comic trying to be told in a modern contemporary setting of the 90s, and it doesn't work. The drawing's fine. Dwayne Turner's awesome, but there are some storytelling elements that just did not work for me. It was hard to see, and it's just kind of fairly it's just okay at best, but I didn't enjoy it really. Like I have exactly zero interest in picking up the next issue to see what happens. If I would have bought this as a kid, I would have been like, nope, done, out. And as a grown ass old cantankerous fart, up, done, out, not interested, not picking up another issue of it. But I feel like it was an earnest effort. That's what I want to make sure I point out and mention, is that I feel like they were really trying to do something worthwhile. Like, it may not work for me, but it doesn't mean that they didn't try. And you can respect the fact that they tried to do a thing well. And even if it doesn't work, you're like, you know what? A solid effort, A for effort, D- on end result, I think. So I don't know. I'd actually be curious what anybody thinks about this book in particular. Like the character Cage, like I said, when Brian Michael Bendis gets a hold of him and throws him in the Avengers, I was reading that stuff and I became a fan. I liked the character. He was very interesting. He was very fun. And I like the character, but not here. I mean, and he's fine. He's just, I don't think there's anything really special about him here. So anyway, that's all I got for this one. I really appreciate you watching. Thanks for joining my channel. Thanks for watching my channel. And I'll see you on the next one.